600 pounds. That is how much the final physical print of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey weighs. It stretches for exactly 11 miles. It cost around $80,000 just to print. And it took 2 million feet of 70mm IMAX film to capture. By every logical metric of modern Hollywood, a movie like this shouldn't exist anymore. We live in an era where blockbusters are built in server rooms. If you look at something like Thor: Love and Thunder, you see the old, established approach. Mythology is treated like an IP playground. It's heavy CGI environments, bright colors, and a jokey tone where the gods are basically reduced to punchlines. But The Odyssey takes the exact opposite approach. This is what happens when a mythological epic is treated like a sacred text and shot with the intensity of a war film. One reduces the ancient world to a joke, the other uses 70mm film to trap you inside of it. And while everyone is talking about how incredible the film looks, almost nobody understands the absolutely insane, archaic process of how Nolan actually pulled this off. Or the uncomfortable reality that this film might be the most elitist cinematic experiment in history. But to understand why this film is breaking the industry, we have to look at what it's actually competing against. Films like Gladiator or Troy represent the high bar of modern epic filmmaking. They are visually ambitious, they are massive, but they also rely on a very safe, recognizable visual language. You get the wide shot to establish the location. You get the medium shot for dialogue. You get the close-up for emotion. And even in masterpieces like Dune, there's a reliance on controlled studio work and digital backdrops that creates this dreamlike distance between the viewer and the environment. You are always aware that you're watching a movie, but The Odyssey breaks that completely. Nolan didn't want to make a definitive museum-like reconstruction of ancient Greece. He realized that for a story that has existed for 3,000 years, you can't fight the millions of versions that already exist in readers' heads. He learned this with Batman. You can't outsmart decades of expectations. Therefore, his responsibility wasn't literal translation. It was a spirit. It was taking themes like trauma, identity, and the desperate struggle to get home and making them physically punishing. This is why there are no plastic filling costumes here. There are no sleek digital surfaces. Everything on screen is grounded in real textures: wood, bronze, leather, and dirt. The costumes look like they've been bitten by the sun and salt water for 10 years, because they practically have. But the visuals are only half of the trick. Because to actually transport you into this world, the production did something with the sound design that I have never seen a blockbuster attempt before. The sound design in this film treats the environment like a character. When the soldiers are hiding inside the Trojan horse, the sound of the creaking wood and their cramped breathing builds this suffocating psychological pressure. Nolan thanked his composer, Ludwig Göransson, I hope I pronounced that right, from using a traditional orchestra. Instead, they worked with historians to recreate ancient Greek instruments that literally do not exist today, like the aloes and the lyre. And they combined those ancient sounds with 35 bronze gongs, industrial scrap metal, and heavy synthesizers. The result is a score that doesn't just tell you when to feel awe, it physically traps you. The ocean roars, the hull of the ship groans, and the IMAX speakers turn every single moment into a physical ordeal. And that physical ordeal required a physical shoot. The crew spent months shooting on real seas and real coasts. Nolan wanted to capture the ocean in all of its moods. Benevolent, terrifying, vast. He wanted to show how brutal and faith-dependent a journey across an uncharted world actually was. Because shooting on real water is impressive, but it doesn't explain the psychological effect this film has on you in the theater. The Odyssey is the first feature film in history to be shot entirely on 70mm IMAX cameras. When the frame is that tall and that wide, you can't see outside the movie. It breaks the passive window of traditional cinema. It acts less like a movie and more like a highly responsive, unskippable simulation. Nolan uses this scale to create a first-person psychological effect. When you are on the open ocean, it feels genuinely endless. When you are trapped in the Trojan horse, the wood, beams, and bodies fill the frame so entirely that your eyes have no escape route. You are shoved into physical space. You can't outsmart a simulation forever. Because no matter how brilliant Odysseus' tactics are, and no matter how perfectly he clears each trial, he is still just a mortal man playing a game where the rules are written by someone else. The sheer size of the IMAX frame reinforces his insignificance against the gods. But getting that massive image onto the screen required a post-production process so risky it almost feels like a myth itself. We need to talk about how this movie was edited, because it was put together almost entirely by hand. They shot 100 hours of footage. When the edits were logged digitally, the computer didn't spit out a finished movie. It gave them a list of numbers, instructions on exactly where to physically cut the negatives. The film then went to a lab in Burbank, California, simply because it's the only motion picture film lab in the world that still produces 70mm prints. The original film was cut and glued by hand, using a glue pot and splicer for every single cut in the 3-hour movie. And the thing is that there is only one original negative. If a mistake is made with the glue, that frame is essentially gone forever. Even the color grading was done manually. Filters were physically held up against the film on a light table until Nolan was satisfied. Valves open and close to physically expose the print to light. It was run through a chemical bath. It was dried in a glass enclosure. And the result is that 600-pound print. A masterpiece of engineering that has to be built onto 2 different platters just to fit into a projector. It is pure creativity, but this is exactly where the problem starts. Because there are only about 90 people on Earth who actually know how to operate these 70mm IMAX projectors. And that creates a very uncomfortable reality. Large amounts of the image are completely inaccessible to the average cinema goer. Tickets for the true 70mm experience sold out months in advance, with resales reaching astronomical prices. And honestly, I found myself wondering whether this new cinematic experience is rooted in elitism. I think it completely contradicts the idea that cinema and art should be accessible to all. So when you build a $200 million movie that can only be properly viewed in a handful of theaters worldwide, are you pushing the medium forward, or are you just building a VIP room for film purists? And yet, Nolan isn't trying to make a documentary about ancient Greek military history for a textbook. He is bringing one of humanity's greatest stories to a modern audience. And he is doing it with a level of craftsmanship that refuses to compromise. The Odyssey is a reminder of the complete and breathtaking skill that goes into filmmaking. You just simply can't not watch a movie of this scale and beauty and not appreciate just how incredible it is. Not just the final product, but the sheer human effort required to make it into existence. Outlets like IndieWire and Variety are calling it one of the most accomplished epics ever shot. Alongside Dune, it has completely reset the standard for what a blockbuster can actually be. It is a towering cinematic achievement, and I think it is almost certainly going to sweep the Oscars. Because we've traded texture for perfection in so much of our modern entertainment. But the Odyssey proves that the texture, the glue, the physical film, the real water, the ancient instruments is exactly what makes the magic feel real. If you want to understand more about cinema, feel free to check my channel and subscribe for more videos in the future. I'll see you in the next one.